Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the next D&D chapter of How to Play D&D. This is Miss Kathy, one of your resident D&D geeks. As I said before, I've been playing for a long time. Right now, I'm trying to learn how to be a DM, a dungeon master. But as far as being a player, yeah, I've been playing for a little over 30 years. So anyway, so today we're going to go over how you create a character. And basically the choices you need to make and all of that good stuff, okay? Because let's just start. Your choice of character race provides you with a basic set of advantages and abilities. If you're a fighter, are you a stubborn dwarf monster slayer, a graceful elf blade master, or a fierce dragonborn gladiator? If you're a wizard, are you a brave human, spell for hire, or devious tiefling conjurer? Your character race not only affects your ability scores and powers, but it also provides you the first cues for building your story, building the story around your character, all right? So the first thing you're going to want to look at when you're thinking about what character you want to play is the character race. And there are several races to choose from, and you will find all of them in the player's handbook. So we're going to start with humans. That's a pretty simple one, isn't it? Humans are the youngest of the common races, okay? Late to arrive in the scene, in the world. They're short-lived in comparison to dwarves, elves, dragons, etc., okay? It's because their lives are shorter, and they strive to achieve as much as they can in the years they're given, okay? So they have a set finite time that they're going to live, like any human. Perhaps they feel like they've got something to prove to the elder races, and those are the dwarves and orcs, etc. And that's why they build their mighty empires and foundations on conquest and trade. So humans are always looking to take over areas and trade with areas. They're always looking to build up their empires, okay? They're the most adaptable and ambitious out of all the common races. They have widely varying tastes, morals, and customs in the different lands where they have settled, kind of like human beings now. So this one's pretty much a no-brainer, okay? So you can be a human. They have a short lifespan, like I said, but their nation and the culture, that helps to preserve their traditions, all right? Humans who seek adventure are the most daring and ambitious members of a daring and ambitious race. So if you have a human in the party, they're going to be all gung-ho to do things. They seek to earn glory in the eyes of their fellow humans and other races by amassing power, wealth, and fame. More than other people, human champion causes rather than territories or groups. So if there's like a major cause with, someone was kidnapped, they want to go and champion that person. They want to go find that person who was kidnapped. So if you're human, you're going to know how a human works in the races as far as this game is going. Let's see, elves. Now, I wasn't going to show you a picture of a human. You can look at the mirror for that. Okay. Oops, sorry. This is an elf. Okay. They live in places of ethereal beauty, so they like beauty, all right? Usually in the midst of ancient forests, you'll see silvery spires glittering up with fairy light, soft music, gentle fragrances. Think of Lord of the Rings, all right? Remember what the elves looked like in Lord of the Rings. That'll give you a basic idea of the elves. They love nature, magic, art, artistry, music, poetry. So they're very well-rounded. They're more often amused rather than excited, and they're more likely to be curious than greedy. So unlike the humans, they kind of want to go on an adventure just for the heck of it, because they're curious about what they may find, and they're excited about going on that adventure. When pursuing a goal, however, whether adventuring on a mission or learning a new skill or art, elves can be very focused and very relentless. So if you give an elf a task, they're going to pursue it till the end. They're not going to stop. They're slow to make friends and enemies, and then they're even slower to forget them. They reply to petty insults with disdain and to serious insults with vengeance. So be careful. Don't insult an elf. They take up adventuring out of wanderlust. They get bored. Like I said, they're they get very excited, so they want something to excite them. They're very long-lived. They can enjoy centuries of exploration and discovery. They don't like the pace of the human society. It's regimented and it's constantly changing. So they like to find careers that let them travel freely and set their own pace. So elves are very adventurous and they're very independent. They like exercising their martial prowess. They like to show off their fighting skills, basically, or they like to gain great magical power. That's a big thing that the elves really like to do. And adventuring allows them to do that because they'll find some of that, or hopefully they will. Some join with rebels to fight against oppression, and others might just become, once again, champions of causes. Now, there's a category of an elf called a drow, a dark elf. That's usually a character that I play. Just to give you a basic background on them, tens of thousands of years ago, the elves were divided, with those of benevolent disposition battling those who were selfish and cruel. Okay, so the war among the elven kind ended when the good elves banished the malevolent kin to the subterranean depths, so caverns, deep underground places. Okay, those are drows. Those are dark elves. The dark elves built an empire in this underworld. Okay, so the dark elves worship a deity called Loth, and Loth lives in the abyss. She's known as the Spider Queen, or the Queen of the Spiders. So the Dark Elves just love her, and they built their subterranean civilization around her. So whatever she demands, the Drow are going to do, because they worship her. She is their deity. She is their god. They're seldom seen on the surface world. They do plot to destroy the elves that banished them because they weren't too happy about that. But they no longer see themselves as exiles. They see themselves as a completely total different race from just the regular elves. They're destined to be rulers of the darkness. And when Loth, the Spider Queen, commands them to rise up and kill, they will do so. Okay? They've lived underground so long that they've evolved to their surroundings and they can see in the dark. They can't stand sunlight, though. So it really, really hurts their eyes. And when slaves are in short supply in the Underdark, the Drow send raiding parties up there to get some. So they're pretty mean guys. They will torture people into submission. They really are content to stay underground because that's where they feel in control. All right, guys, so the next one we're going to talk about is another elf. This guy is called, can you see it? He is a half-elf. Okay, so half-elves are a cross between an elf and a human. All right, so they get the best qualities from both of these races. Human curiosity, inventiveness, and ambition, and then that's tempered by the refined senses, the love of nature, art, music, beauty. Okay, some half-elves live among humans. They're set apart by their emotional and physical differences. They watch friends and loved ones while time barely touches them. So in other words, if they're living with humans, they see the humans age much more quickly than they do. Others live with elves, and then they start growing kind of restless when they get older. They're unable to really fit into either society. So they're kind of solitary wanderers, but they will join up with adventuring parties. They have no lands of their own. They are welcomed in human cities, somewhat less in elven forests. Half-elves can form small communities of their own, sometimes usually within a human community. So that's basically about a half-elf. Definitely, if you want to choose a half-elf, choose a half-elf. And another one that we're going to go over here is a dwarf. And I know you guys are probably familiar with dwarves, but here's a picture of one of our dwarves. She looks pretty wicked and mean, doesn't she? Hey, dwarf kingdoms are rich. They're rich in grandeur. They have halls carved into the roots of mountains. You can hear picks and hammers echoing in the mines, blazing forges. They have a very big commitment to clan and tradition, and they cannot stand goblins and orcs. So if you're going to be in an adventuring party and you have a goblin and orc in your party, you guys may not get along, okay? They respect the tradition of their clans, trading their ancestries back to the founding of their most ancient strongholds in the youth of the world. So these guys have a very old ancestry. They've been around forever. They don't abandon their traditions lightly. They're very traditional with their dwarven traditions. They are very industrious with labor. They're very skilled in battle, and they have devotion to the forge, meaning they're good blacksmiths. Okay. When they take up their adventuring life, the reason, motivation behind that would be for treasure, for its own sake. Or they may actually go looking for treasure to help one of their own. So they do kind of have an altruistic desire about them. They're driven by the command or inspiration of a deity. So most of these ancient races will have a deity. Clan and ancestry are also very important motivators for a dwarf. A dwarf might seek to restore a clan's honor, avenge an ancient wrong one, or her clan suffered, or avenge an ancient wrong one where her clan suffered, sorry, or earn a new place within the clan after being exiled. So trying to prove themselves after they did something wrong. Or let's say an axe was discarded by a dwarf many years ago. Well, dwarves nowadays may go out to look for it because it is an ancient artifact and important to their clans. Okay, so there's a little bit about your dwarves. Now we're going to move on to a little creature called a halfling. But here's your halflings. Okay. They're very cheerful, as you could tell by that picture. They love family. They love friendship. They love the comfort of hearth and home. They have very few dreams of glory or gold. The adventurers among them usually venture into the world for finding community or friendship, wanderlust, or just basic curiosity to see what the world is like. They love discovering new things, simple things, an exotic food or an unfamiliar style of clothing. So they're very enthusiastic. Halflings are. They usually live in remote agricultural communities, but some form nomadic bands and then they travel constantly, excuse me, lured by the open road. But even these wanderers, they kind of like a little bit of stability. So they like the peace, the hearth, the home. Even though the home may be an old wagon jostling down a road, it's still their home and it's a place they can go to and feel safe and comforted in. They usually set out on an adventure to defend their communities, support their friends, or explore the world. They want to satisfy their curiosity. Their adventuring isn't a career. It's more like an opportunity or maybe sometimes a necessity. All right, guys, so the next character race that we're going to look over is a gnome. See that guy right there? All right. They're constantly busy. You'll hear like a busy hum around their warrens and neighborhoods. They have very close-knit communities. They have lots of grinding gears, major explosions going on, a yelp of triumph or surprise or even laughter, okay? They love jokes. They love practical jokes. They love puns. They love to pull pranks on their friends. But they are also very dedicated to the more serious tasks that they undertake. Many gnomes are skilled engineers, alchemists, and inventors. They are willing to make mistakes, and they do laugh at themselves in the process of it. But they take really big risks, and because they have really big dreams. So they envision these dreams, and they try to go forward. They're curious. They're very impulsive. They may take up adventuring as a way to see the world or just for a love of exploring. They love gems and other fine items, but they really like gems. They take adventuring, some of those gnomes that really like gems may go on an adventure to find wealth. Regardless of what sends them out, they eke as much enjoyment out of it as they can while they're on an adventure. Sometimes it kind of annoys their companions, but that's okay. All right, so the next dude we're going to look at, this is a half-orc. Half-orcs are not the prettiest characters, but they are very proud. Some of them are proud chiefs of orc tribes whose human blood gives them an advantage over their full-blooded orc rivals, okay? Some of them are children of the frontiers where orcs and human barbarians live kind of in an uneasy, tension-filled balance, and they'll fight sometimes or they'll trade in others. Some are outcasts simply because of the mixture. the world would shun them. So they get along by their strength and their tendency for violence. You mess with an orc, you're going to have some problems. Some of them are adventurers. They want to go out and find a home and a family of their own, and they don't care about the ancestry. They just care about loyalty to them, okay? They regard battle scars as tokens of pride and ornamental scars as things of beauty. So you'll see orcs with a lot of scarification on them, either due to battles or due to what they've had done to themselves. Some scars may mark them as a half-orc, a former slave, or an exile, and a disgraced exile. So any orc who's lived near, or any half-orc who's lived near orcs is going to have some type of scars. Sometimes a half-orc that's living among humans will display these proudly. And half-orc is half human, half orc, if I didn't say that. They mostly live among orcs. Of all the races, the humans are most likely to accept half-orcs, and half-orcs almost always live in human lands, but not living with other orcs. Man, I'm saying orc a lot. Anyways, whether proving themselves among rough barbarian tribes or scrabbling to survive in the slums of larger cities, half-orcs get on by their physical might, their endurance, and the sheer determination they get from the human ancestry. Okay, so those are few of the races. There are more, and you definitely need to look at the player's handbook to find them, but there are other races in there. Didn't want to take the time going through all of them, because we need to now move on to character classes. And basically what character classes are, think about the basic kind of character you want to play. Do you want to be a courageous knight, a skulking rogue, a fervent cleric, or a flamboyant wizard? You might be more interested in an unconventional character, like a brawny rogue, somebody who likes to mix it up hand in hand, or a sharpshooter who picks up enemies from afar. So here's where we're going to talk about classes. One of our first classes is the class of a fighter. All right, guys, so our first class is a fighter. There's your fighter. He looks like a fighter, doesn't he? He's the most diverse class of characters in the world. Questing knights, conquering overlords, royal champions, foot soldiers, hardened mercenaries, and bandit kings, they're all fighters, okay? And they share an unparalleled mastery with weapons and armors through knowledge of skill and combat. So they're fighters. I mean, that basically tells you what they do. Most of these troops are untrained soldiers, and those troops would be city watch troops, village militia, or Queen's Army. Okay, so not every member of those groups is a fighter. Veteran soldiers, military officers, trained bodyguards, dedicated knights, those are fighters. Okay, some feel drawn to use their training as adventurers. The dungeon delving, monster slaying, and other dangerous work, that's good training for a fighter. Okay. There are greater risks, but greater rewards. There'll be few fighters in the city watch, and they have the opportunity to discover, like, let's say, a magic flame sword, for example, because a fighter can use one of those. What's that? You'll have to look those up in the books. They learn the basics of all combat styles. Every fighter can swing an axe, fence with a rapier, wield a longsword or a greatsword, use a bow, trap foes in a net with some degree of skill. Fighting, that's what they do. Okay, they also are very adept with shields and with armor. They also specialize, each fighter will specialize in a certain type of combat. Some concentrate on archery, some concentrate on using two weapons at once, like fighting with two swords, etc. And some actually can work on their martial skills by using magic. Okay, so this broad combination of general ability and extensive specialization make fighters superior on the battlefield and in dungeons. So if you want to if you're out there looking for a fighter would be the class you'd want to choose. All right, our next character class is a wizard. See him right there? Oh, that's our wizard. Wizards are supreme magic users, defined and united as a class by the spells they cast. Okay, their magic can conjure elementals from other planes, glimpses of the future, or turn slain foes into zombies. That's kind of scary. They can change one substance into another. They can change a creature's form. They can open pathways to other planes, or they can even kill with a single word. They're very wild. They're varied in form and function, and the power of magic draws students who seek to master its mysteries. So if you're a wizard, that's your main focus. You want to learn all the mysteries of the world, and you want to be able to manipulate them. Okay? Some aspire to become like the gods, changing reality itself, although that might not be a good idea because some of these spells could cause you to lose your mind. The casting of a spell typically requires mere utterance of a few words, abracadabra, alakazam. Sometimes they need some exotic materials to go with those words. Wingardium Leviosa, you might need something for that, These surface components barely hint at their expertise, and they get that expertise from apprenticeships and countless hours of studying magic. They live and die by their spells. Everything else is secondary. They learn new spells as they experiment and grow in experience. So as your character goes up in levels, you will learn new spells as you go up in levels. They can learn from other wizards. They can learn from ancient tomes. They can learn from scrolls they find. They can learn from ancient creatures such as fae. So wizards, you want magic, you want to use magic. Wizard is the one that you're going to want to pick. All right, our next class that I'm going to go over, this guy is a cleric. And when a cleric takes up an adventuring life, it's usually because his god demands it. The goals of the deities require that they have mortal agents in the world. So these clerics are going to be their mortal agents. It often involves braving the dangers beyond the walls of civilization and security. They may be seeking ancient holy relics and ancient tombs. Clerics are also expected to help protect their deities' worshipers. So in other words, fighting orcs that may threaten a village that worships this certain deity, negotiating peace between warring nations, or sealing a portal that would allow a demon prince never to enter the world. So most adventuring clerics maintain some connection to established temples and orders of their faiths. So the clerics are very, very into their deities, all right? Sometimes temples will ask for clerics' aids, or a high priest may be in a position to demand the aid of a cleric. Clerics have divine magic. Basically what that means is power of the gods. They're conduits for power, and they can manifest miraculous events. The gods don't grant this power lightly or to anybody who just comes by and seeks it. They give it to the clerics because they choose to fulfill a higher calling. They're dedicated, okay? Harnessing divine magic doesn't rely on study or training. They may learn formulaic prayers or ancient rites, but the ability to cast spells relies on the devotion and intuitive understanding of that deity. So basically, you are doing what the deity is asking you to do. They can combine magic of healing, inspire their allies with spells that harm, and they can hinder foes. They can inspire awe and dread, lay curses of plague or poison, and even call down flames from heaven to consume their enemies. Sometimes evildoers benefit most from a mace to the head, so clerics don't neglect combat training and can wade into a melee. So in other words, clerics are pretty bad dudes. Bad by meaning good bad. All right, so if you want to become a cleric, just remember you are going to be listening and doing whatever a deity above you that you believe wholeheartedly in is going to be telling you what to do. Our next character class is a rogue or a thief, but they refer to him as a rogue. There's your rogue. Every town and every city has their share of rogues. Most of them live up to the worst stereotypes of the class. They make livings as burglars. Burglars? No, they don't. They make their living as burglars, assassins, cut purses, and con artists. All right? These scoundrels are usually organized into a thieves guild or into a crime family. Okay? Most rogues operate independently, but sometimes they recruit apprentices to help in their scams. Sometimes their scams need more than one person for them to work. Some rogues do make an honest living as locksmiths, investigators, or exterminators, because that's what they're really good at. It can be a dangerous job in a world where dire rats and were ants haunt the sewers. and a rogue is called in to do extermination, that might be kind of a difficult task. As adventurers, they fall on both sides of the law. Some are hardened criminals who decide to seek their fortune and treasure hoards, while others live a life of adventure to escape the law coming after them. Some have learned and perfected their skills with the explicit purpose of infiltrating ancient ruins and hidden crypts in search of temples. Now, I know most of you have watched Indiana Jones, so you know what happens when you infiltrate ancient ruins and try to steal those treasures. Yep. Rogues devote as much effort to mastering the use of a variety of skills as they do to perfecting their combat abilities. It gives them an expertise that few other characters can match. Okay, most of them focus on stealth and deception because they have to be sneaky. They're thieves. Others refine skills that can help them in a dungeon environment, as in climbing, finding, and disarming traps, or opening locks. Rogues are excellent lock pickers. When it comes to combat, they prioritize skill over brute strength. So a rogue would rather take his time and make one really good strike than attacking over and over again and wearing himself out. Have almost a supernatural knack for avoiding danger, and some rogues may learn magical tricks to help with their abilities. Our next class that I'm going to go over is a ranger. There's our ranger. They may make livings as hunters, guides, or trackers. Their true calling is to defend the outskirts of civilization from the ravages of monsters and humanoid hordes that come in from the wild. So they're going to kind of be at the edges of village or developments or cities, right by the woods, kind of making sure everything's safe. They have a lot of independence. They're very fierce about their independence. They're very well suited to adventuring for that because they can just wander off whenever they want to. They find the responsibility of protecting the rest of an adventuring party to be somewhat burdensome, but most quickly find that other adventurers who can carry their own weight in a fight are worth any extra burden. So in other words, if you have a rogue in your or if you have a ranger in your party, they're going to do really well to protect you as long as you're helping to protect yourself. They don't like careless mistakes, or they don't like to have to carry you through the whole thing. A ranger's talents and abilities are honed with deadly focus on the grim task of protecting the borderlands. So they're there to protect. They specialize in hunting monsters that threaten the edges of civilization, terrible giants, dragons, humanoid creatures, okay? They learn to track their prey as a predator does. They move stealthily and they'll hide behind bush and rubble. They'll take their time. They focus on combat training and techniques that are particularly useful against specific foes. They're very intimate with the wilds. They're able to cast spells that would harness nature's powers, kind of like a druid, but they're not reporting to a deity. Their spells focus on speed, stealth, and the hunt. Our next class is the Barbarian. Okay. Barbarians are defined by their rage. Think of the word barbarian, okay? Their rage is unbridled, unquenchable, and unthinkable. I mean, they have a large amount of fury. More than mere emotion, their anger is the ferocity of a cornered predator. Just think of like an unrelenting storm or a sea that keeps churning up. Their rage springs from a communion with fierce animal spirits. Some of them draw from a rolling reservoir of anger. So in other words, they're always mad. They're always mad and they're always in pain. For every barbarian, their rage is a power that fuels not just battle frenzy, but uncanny reflexes, all right? Resilience and huge feats of strength. Think of a berserker. That's what a barbarian is. They're uncomfortable when they're hedged in by walls or crowds. So they're not that comfortable in villages or towns. They thrive in the wilds of their homelands. That would be tundra, jungle, or grasslands where their tribes live and hunt. They come alive in the chaos of combat. Fighting is what they want to do because they're so mad they just want to take it out on anybody. They can enter a berserk state when their rage takes over, and that gives them superhuman strength and resilience. He can draw on this reservoir fury a few times, but After that, they got to kind of rest because his body can only take so much of that. Think about when you're really stressed out or something and you just kind of need to take a breather. That's what they need to do after these great violent outbursts of rage. So yeah, that's basically a barbarian. Our next class is a druid. There's our druid. Okay. Whether calling on the intimate elemental forces of nature or emulating the creatures of the animal world, druids are an embodiment of nature's resilience, cunning, and fury. Okay. They don't claim mastery over nature, but they're like an extension of it. Druids are really big into nature. Okay? They revere it above all else. They gain their spells and magical powers either from the force of nature or a nature deity. So kind of like the cleric, but their deity is going to be more in the forest, in the trees, in the sun, in the sky. They're more like that. Many druids pursue a mystical spirituality of a union with nature rather than devotion to a divine entity like the clerics. Some of them will serve gods of wild nature animals or elemental forces like rain or wind, the moon. Okay. Sometimes this type of faith is called the old faith, and it's in contrast to the worship of deities in temples and shrines. His shrine basically is the forest. Druid spells are always and often oriented towards nature and animals, the power of tooth and claw, sun and moon, fire and storm. They gain the ability to take on animal form, and some druids make a very particular study of this practice, even to the point where they prefer their animal form over their druid form. And our last class that I'm going to talk about, that would be our Paladin. There's our Paladin. He looks pretty fierce, doesn't he? Paladins are united by their oaths and to stand against the forces of evil. Paladins are really, really good guys. Whether they're sworn before a god's altar or sworn in by a priest, in a sacred glade before nature spirits or a fae gathering, okay? Paladin's oath is a powerful bond. They have an oath and they will always seek out to keep that oath. Okay, it turns a devout warrior into a blessed champion. All right, they swear to uphold justice and righteousness, to stand with good things in the world that bring in the encroaching darkness. They want to push it back. Okay, they want to hunt the forces of evil. So they're out there. They're kind of like Captain America. Think about it like that. Different paladins focus on different aspects of righteousness, but they're all bound by the oaths that grant them power to do their sacred work. Many paladins are devoted to gods of good, but his power comes from a commitment to justice as much as it does from a god. They train for years to learn the skills of combat, mastering a variety of weapons and armor, their shields, everything. Their martial skills are secondary to the magical power they wield. They have the power to heal the sick and the injured, to smite the wicked and the undead, and to protect the innocent and those who want to join him in the fight for justice. So the paladin would be a great guy to have in your party. Okay, so these are just a few of the classes that you can select for your character. There are many more in the books. And then your third phase, and we're not going to go too much into this because I'm going to allow you guys to pick this, is called your background. And your background basically is your personality. Okay, so you're defined more than your race and your class. Your character is an individual. So what you're going on to do, they have got their own stories, their own interests, their own connections, capabilities beyond that their class and race define, kind of like human beings. In other words, what do you have an interest in? What do you like to do? And that's what your character's background is going to be. And just to tell you a few that are in here, we have artisans, we have bards, entertainers, we have hermits. I don't know if I'd want to be a hermit. Sages, outlanders, sailors. There's all sorts of extra things that you need to add on to the two features we just spoke about, the race and the class. So when you're setting up your character, look at the races, look at the classes, and then select your background. When you have all three of those together, you're ready for your character, and you'll be ready to roll up your abilities and select all the items you'll be carrying and all that great stuff. If you need more information on Dungeons and Dragons, go to the Wizards of the Coast website. They have so much information there. And you can also check out books like these from the library. Right now, we are using these in our D&D group. They will be released eventually, I mean, pretty soon, actually, to the entire library system. But if you can't find it here at Madison County, you can find these books in the Cardinal system. Remember that, we can always use the Cardinal system. So I hope this helped you guys kind of sort out what exactly it is that you want to be when you play D&D, and it'll give you some time to think about it too and really develop your character, because once you select a character and develop them, you want to keep them around for a long, long time, because the more you keep these characters with you, the more you play with it, the more you will go up in levels, the more spells you learn, the more weapons you'll become accustomed to using, the more skills you'll learn. It's just like, you know, living in the real world. You're developing yourself, you're learning new things, and you go up in your abilities. So I hope you guys found this informative. If any of you have any questions or any information you'd like to know, you can email me at c9s@madisoncounty.nc.gov. I'd be happy to answer any questions, or come on into the Mars Hill Library. If I'm here, I'll be happy to answer questions for you too. But hey, go out there and start looking at some Dungeons and Dragons books, looking on their websites. And if you're interested, I hope you join us one day and have a wonderful, wonderful time. And hey, happy gaming. See y'all.